Valencia CF is no doubt one of the most storied clubs in Spain, but save a Copa del Rey victory in 2019, the last decade or so has been hard on them, and it's getting uglier and uglier. Hey there, I'm Adrian, and in covering how Jorge Mendes is probably the most powerful behind-the-scenes figure in football, and how he has a ton of influence at clubs such as Wolves, AS Monaco, Benfica, and of course, Valencia, a lot of you have requested a video on Valencia and what exactly is transpiring there. And so ask and you shall receive, unless you're asking for FIFA 21 content, which I am not interested in making. And so today, let's look at who Peter Lim is and how he got involved with Valencia alongside Uncle Jorge, how the side has deteriorated under his watch, the war of words between the ownership's family and their fans, and of course, why they sold so many important players during the summer of 2020 and didn't replace them. As you're well aware, Valencia is one of Spain's most successful sides, the fifth most successful side as far as trophies are concerned, with their most recent success coming in 2019 via Copa del Rey victory over Barcelona. But that was a bit of a red herring among some extremely difficult times of late, as Valencia have looked far from the team that played in 2 consecutive Champions League finals, but just fell short. Far from the team that won La Liga and the UEFA Cup in 2004, boasting players such as Pablo Aimar, Mista, Carlos Marchena, club legend Roberto Ayala, and Santi Cañizares, amongst many others. The team was in a bit of financial and football trouble back in 2013. In the 2013-14 season, with Juan Antonio Pizzi taking over for Miroslav Dukic, Valencia managed to finish in 8th, their lowest finish since the 2007-2008 season. This was also the first time that they had failed to qualify for a European competition since the late 90s, and coupled with the debt that was piling on at the club, things were looking a bit grim. In steps Peter Lim. Rhymes with grim. That was unintentional, but there you go. A Singaporean businessman who purchased a 70% stake from Valencia's former owner. You'll probably know Lim as a controversial figure based off of what he has done with Valencia, which we will explore, of course, but he is also controversial thanks to his involvement with Singaporean company Wilmar. We won't go into too many details about Lim's past and Wilmar, anything outside of football really, but he initially made his millions in stocks before investing in Wilmar, a food processing company that has had plenty of controversy surrounding it. Their biggest moneymaker is the production of palm oil, which contributes to Greenpeace labeling Wilmar as, quote, the biggest and dirtiest palm oil trader in the world. But back to the football side of things, Lim had previously attempted to purchase 2 different clubs. He had a failed attempt at purchasing Liverpool back in 2010, as well as a failed attempt in buying a majority share of AC Milan from Silvio Berlusconi in 2013. But 1 year later, he found his success. In 2014, he got that 70% stake in Valencia that he was looking for. From the outset, he seemed like a godsend for the club, using his rumored $2.4 billion net worth to help clear millions of Valencia's debt immediately. One of his first moves was to bring in then Rio Ave manager Nuno Espirito Santo in July of 2014, just 1 month after Peter Lim had taken over at Valencia. A seemingly random signing. Or was it? Now, of course, Nuno Espirito Santo has close ties with Jorge Mendes, as he was the first ever client of the super agent back in the late 90s. There were rumblings that Jorge Mendes and his Just the Food agency played a role in the purchase of Valencia by Peter Lim, that he was an advisor to the Singaporean throughout the process, a claim which Mendes himself denied a year later in 2015, saying, quote, I had nothing to do with the purchase. The decision to invest in a football club was purely Peter's personal choice. He is a very intelligent man who has a good eye for talent. Adding further fuel to the fire were the transfers of André Gomes and Rodrigo from Benfica in that same summer on loan with an option to buy, both of which were Jorge Mendes clients at the time. These kinds of transfers, ones that were overseen by Mendes, definitely weren't in short supply following Lim's takeover of Valencia. With Nuno Espirito Santo's first campaign with Valencia, it was seen as a success, as their 4th place finish in the 2014-15 season was a massive improvement on the 8th from last season, and got them back into Europe via the Champions League. But that would be a false sunrise for Valencia and their fans, as the 2015-16 season was an absolute disaster. A cruel meme of a season, really, which I will explain in a second. That summer saw Lim and Valencia spend a ton of money to help support Nuno Espirito Santo. Sure, they sold Otamendi for 45 million euros, but the loan deals for André Gomes and Rodrigo were made permanent at 15 and 30 million euros alone, plus They bought further Mendes clients in João Cancelo, another one in Alvaro Negredo, yet another Mendes client in Ayman Abdennour, a couple of Braga players that Mendes no doubt helped facilitate the moves for in some capacity, and despite all of this, Valencia got off to a terrible start both in La Liga and in their Champions League group, which led to Nuno Espirito Santo resigning in November of 2015. After Voro, he comes up all the time as a caretaker, oversaw the team for 1 week as caretaker manager, Gary Neville was infamously given the reins of Valencia, which of course was his first job as a head coach of a club. In his first match, he started how he finished, with a loss, this time to bottom of the group Lyon in the Champions League and thus dropping into the Europa League. More losses followed, and in February, Valencia were embarrassed by FC Barcelona, losing 7-0 in the Copa del Rey semi-final. He didn't last the entirety of the season, as he was later sacked at the end of March, boasting a terrible win percentage of just 35%. Their third manager, Neville, made way for Paco Ayestaran, their fourth of the season, and Valencia finished in 12th, following all of that investment into the squad the previous summer. How did Neville even get the job in the first place? You're probably wondering, as he was the assistant to the English national team prior to this and didn't have any first team coaching experience. This, of course, is where the title of this part of the video comes into play. Not only was Jorge Mendes seemingly benefiting from bringing in a ton of his own clients to the club, but Peter Lim and Gary Neville have ties to each other via Lim being a shareholder in Salford City FC, the club that the class of 92 now owns a majority share in. Class of 92, of course, being Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt, David Beckham, the Neville brothers, Manchester United legends, and of course, Peter Lim. Lim got involved in 2014 while he had sold off 10% of his stake to Beckham in 2019, thus making the former United stars the majority shareholders. And so, now knowing that, Valencia's fans could see what was happening before their eyes. A super agent was largely dictating their transfer moves to the point where it felt as though Valencia were restricted to buying from Just the Foot's list of clients. And on top of that, they handed an opportunity to one of their owner's friends as some sort of experiment at the expense of the club and their season. The lack of success, coupled with that large outlay of spending during the 2015-16 season, meant that Valencia was hemorrhaging money. According to Transfermarkt, their net spend for the 15-16 season was negative 103.29 million euros. Those two aspects coupled together could only mean one thing for Valencia: sell, sell, sell that summer, with important players and fan favorites such as Andre Gomes and Paco Alcacer leaving for Barcelona, Schroeder and Mustafi sold off to Arsenal, among plenty of others, in a bid to strengthen the side's finances, while looking to Jorge Mendes to bring in Nani and Ezequiel Garay. This, for the most part, has been the trend at Valencia under Peter Lim. Sign some of Mendes' clients that, more often than not, didn't succeed with the club, blow through multiple managers, sometimes in one season, sell off your top talents, rinse, and repeat. The 16-17 season was no exception, as Valencia labored to yet another 12th place finish and went through 4 managers yet again, if you count Voro's 2 stints as the caretaker manager before and after Cesare Prandelli's 3-month stint in charge of the club. But finally, in 2017, they got something right in hiring Marcelino as their head coach. Under Marcelino, the Valencia didn't get to the heights of the early 2000s, but they certainly were in a better place than before. Important signings such as Coquelin and Gabriel Paulista, coupled with their new manager bringing life to the squad, led to Valencia finishing in 4th and once again reaching the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey, where once again, unfortunately, Barcelona beat them to the final. Marcelino was loved by the squad, and with Valencia back in Europe for the 2018-19 season, it certainly felt like they had found their way out of the hole that Lim's ownership and management of the club had put them in initially. From 12th to back-to-back 4th place finishes, to the semi-finals of the Europa League, and of course Marcelino's pièce de résistance, a 2-1 win over FC Barcelona in the final of the 2019 Copa del Rey, their first piece of silverware in over 10 years. No, the link to Mendes hadn't left, and Lim's ownership was still largely frowned upon by the fans, but overall, Valencia was finally moving in the right direction. Until the summer of 2019, in which things started to go downhill once again. Marcelino's Valencia had a few notable losses in their final 10 matches of the season, and their 7-3 aggregate loss to Arsenal in the Europa League semi-finals weren't exactly high points for them. But the squad was happy with Marcelino as their manager, and the Copa del Rey victory was a rare moment to celebrate for the fans. 3 matches into the season, however, after Valencia drew Real Sociedad, lost to Celta Vigo, and won against Mallorca, Marcelino was sacked, and it did not go down well with the squad. Ezequiel Garay was one of the players to speak out against this. Garay was also in the final year of his contract, and he, according to him, wasn't offered a renewal. Albert Celades was brought in as Marcelino's replacement, and of course, Celades is represented by Carlos Bucero, who, according to Goal.com, works for Jorge Mendes. It wasn't just the players that loved Marcelino, but the fans as well, and his sacking proved to be the tipping point in what was previously a cold war between the fans and the ownership. Marcelino and the ownership were at odds that summer, not agreeing upon which players to sign, as Lim demanded that he have more say in the signings that were made at the club. Knowing this as a precursor adds further perspective to Marcelino's sacking. And in turn, Marcelino's dismissal as the most successful manager in a decade with the club was the straw that broke the camel's back and pretty much marked the beginning of the civil war between Lim, his family, and the fans of the club. Irreparable damage was done, basically. From that point forward, you saw more and more fans vocalizing their displeasure, demanding that Peter Lim leave the club, while Lim's daughter, Kim Lim, an influencer, had taken to social media to scorch the Valencia fans even further. Back in July, while Valencia were in the midst of a horrible run of form that saw them win just twice in 15 matches, and they had just sacked Albert Celades a few days prior, there was no doubt plenty of disdain for Peter Lim, and unfortunately, some Valencia fans no doubt took to badgering his daughter on Instagram, which cannot be condoned, but in reply, Kim said, quote, "Here again, some Valencia CF fans are scolding and cursing at my family and I. Don't they get it? The club is ours, and we can do anything we want with it, and no one can say anything." This screams of the remarks of someone who doesn't understand football at all. The kind of remarks that someone like that would make. We bought it, we own it, and we can do what we want with it. Which technically is true, but anyone familiar with the sport, even in the slightest, know that on a base, almost spiritual level, the club belongs to the fans. The club and the fans are symbiotic. And while you can buy it, and you can own it, you don't really own it. Celades was the 6th manager that Lim had sacked since taking over, while Cesar Sanchez, who resigned shortly after Celades had been sacked, was also the 6th sporting director to have come and gone under Peter Lim's watch. Not great numbers there. And so, without Marcelino to carry the squad up to 4th, Valencia had yet another disappointing campaign that saw them finish in an uninspired 9th place. And so with the club in chaos, Javi Gracia was brought in during the short 2020 off-season with plenty of work to be done at the club. Unfortunately for him, he was hamstrung almost immediately, as once again, Valencia was forced into selling much of their top talent for financial reasons. Here's the tale of the tape. The biggest sale was Rodrigo to Leeds, the man who had been one of Valencia's top scorers during most seasons that he was with the club. He left for 30 million to link up with Marcelo Bielsa. Then, this one must have hurt, Ferran Torres, a Valencia boy through and through and a promising 20-year-old talent for both Valencia and Spain, he was sold to Manchester City for a paltry sum of just 23 million euros. Francis Coquelin, an important piece of Valencia's midfield, he left for 6.5 million to Villarreal, a team that Valencia would be hoping to compete with for European places during the 2020-21 season. Worse yet, perhaps the most painful departure of them all was Dani Parejo, Valencia's captain and icon of the past almost decade, who went to Villarreal for free. And with the money they raised from sales, Javi Gracia no doubt had a list of targets in mind for Lim and likely Jorge Mendes to bring to the club, to get them back in Europe where a club of Valencia's stature belongs. And yet, following the closing of the summer transfer window, Valencia didn't make a single signing, not one from Gracia's list or otherwise. Not a single player joined the club despite losing important pieces of their squad such as Rodrigo, Parejo, Ferran Torres, Coquelin, Garay to a lesser degree of course, Piccini sent on loan to Atalanta. Tragic. According to Football España, this was done in order to save the club with a 40% reduction to their wage bill. No doubt a side effect of the pandemic, but a side effect of that was new coach Javi Gracia having a meeting with the club's chairman Anil Murthy to ask why nobody had been signed despite him losing some of his most important assets for the season. And according to Marca, the only reason why a fuming Gracia didn't resign was because he would owe the club 3 million euros if he had. Managing Valencia is a thankless job at this point. He has a thankless job ahead of him, with his only new arrivals being new kids from the academy or players who were previously on loan last season. And despite Lim allegedly asking Jorge Mendes to help him find a buyer for the club, according to reports from July of 2020, there hasn't been any movement on that front. Again, the fans are unfortunately the biggest victims of a bad example of how to run a club, and hopefully they'll be back to going toe-to-toe with the top teams again soon. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you learned something new, then be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing. Other than that, I thank you for watching. I'm Adrian, this is Rabona TV, and we'll see you in the next video. Ciao!